What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I hope you like this video. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Love and Marriage Huntsville, Season 5, Episode 1. Now, they told us this was a mid-season break, but it's labeled as Season 5, Episode 1, so we just gonna go with that, okay? So we pick up where we left off with Melody at her hosting event at the grand opening of this new amphitheater down to the Huntsville. Now, Martell done brought the kids and surprised Melody, and all I could feel like was that his reason for doing it was to be able to say, look, I brought the kids to support Mel, even though it was my week to have the kids, unlike her, who didn't do it for me when I had my book signing. I really do feel like it was a way for him to get like some points, and Melody was appreciative, and Melody mama took the kids out the room so that I guess Melody and Martell could be alone, and baby, they ain't say nothing. Martell said he was scared to say something because he know that Melody pushes his buttons and he ain't want to start no mess. Melody was like, I appreciate him for bringing the kids and everything, but we don't really need to have no conversation. And it was awkward, and I'm sure, I can only imagine how long this moment went on, because the cameraman, they gave us a couple of seconds. I'm sure this went on for a few minutes, that they literally were just sitting there not saying anything. And so finally, Martell congratulated her on making history, being the first, being there to host the opening event and all that good stuff. And that was pretty much it. That was pretty much it. Now, while this is going on, the couples are starting to arrive at the couples retreat with Dr. Francis. Now, first of all, and I tweeted this to Carlos. Carlos need to listen. Carlos, you need to go ahead and give Dr. Francis a show. Dr. Francis need a show. Let them people go down to Tennessee and get some couples therapy from Dr. Francis and his wife, okay? We have a void. We no longer have the Ayanla fix my life down to the own. And I feel like there's a place for this. I like Dr. Francis. I like his style. I like the way Dr. Francis puts a mirror up to people and he doesn't beat them up, but he's very much like, this is you. This is what you giving me. Anyway, the first couple to show up was Maurice and Kimmy. The second couple to show up was Tiffany and Lewis. And the Scotts are late, right? Letitia and Marceau are late. Now, Kimmy said that's the first problem you need to fix. They're never on time. They're always late. So when they called them, first it was a mix-up with the nanny. How you mix up the nanny? Second, it was traffic was bad. And Dr. Francis was like, yeah, everybody else managed to get here on time. Everybody coming from the same place. Everybody coming from Huntsville. How you get stuck in traffic and ain't nobody else get stuck in traffic. So he was like, that's the first problem, is you can't even get here on time. Then Tiffany was like, well, I have to step out for a minute because I need to make a phone call. My husband knows I'll be back. So Dr. Francis starts talking to Lewis about Tiffany's level of commitment. Now, I can agree with Lewis from saying, listen, I relayed a message, but you need to talk to my wife about that. Like, I'm here and I'm ready to work. She the one that stepped off. She the one that went left. And when he said something, when Lewis said something to Tiffany about it later, Tiffany's thing is, well, are the Scotts here yet? Because, if the Scotts ain't here, I'm good, right? Now, Dr. Francis was like, first of all, they done gave Dr. Francis a confessional. And I said, I know that's right, boo. But like he said she didn't ask if she could leave. She just got up and left and assumed that it was okay. And his thing was, if you, right now, you have made work a priority over your relationship. And she said, well, it just was something because they, end up coming back together. And she said, well, it was something I just couldn't get out of I couldn't move off my calendar. And he was like, you couldn't move it off your calendar. That shows your level of commitment. That shows what is important to you. And Tiffany was like, listen, my husband knows we're on the same page, but you're not on the same page. And in that moment, I appreciate that Kimmy spoke up, and Kimmy was like, because you've been telling us all this time that y'all not on the same page. You've been telling us all this time that you and Lewis, y'all not meshing. Y'all don't have a meeting of the minds. Y'all not at the same place at the same time doing the same thing. That's what you told us. So now Tiffany looking crazy because it's like, well, and Dr. Francis got everybody's number. Now, Letitia and Marceau show up, and Letitia, when she gets out the car, she looks upset. Well, we find out that they had gotten some bad news just as they were, like, pulling up, that a really good friend of hers that she went to college with has passed away. And so they have a moment, and you see that Marcel got his wife's back. Listen, there was a moment, right? Tisha was upset. Marcel was there to comfort her. They were in the moment. So Dr. Francis said, listen, because they got this bad news, and I respect that, I ain't going to beat them up too bad about being late. We'll talk about it later. But right now, I'm going to let it go because it just ain't the right time for it. So he brings all the couples back together, and he says, what was it? He said, your biggest obstacle is the last. No, he said, what did he say? Your biggest victory is the last obstacle you overcame, or something like that. I don't know. It was good in a moment. But he proceeds to talk to the couples again about the commitment. And it seems like Tiffany and Louis don't want to hear nothing. They don't want to hear anything that doesn't say they're perfect. They don't want to hear anything that doesn't say they got it all figured out. They don't want to hear anything that makes them look like they are not the perfect couple. The one thing I will give Marcel and Tisha and Kimmy and Maurice respect on is that they're like, listen, we know we ain't got it all figured out. Like, we not perfect, we not horrible, but we know we don't have all the answers. And even Marcel, who did not want to be there, who got tricked into going, although I don't really think he got tricked into going, but for the purposes of the show, he got tricked into going. He's like, listen, this ain't what I signed up for, but I'm here. Like, I'm here for it. Like, I'll listen to what Dr. Francis has to say, and I'll participate in the activities. So then they give them activity where they have to tie a string around their ankle, and they have to walk around for 15 minutes. And surprisingly, the couple that did it the best was Tisha and Marcel. But they figured out that the closer that they were together, and the easier it was for them to walk. Kimmy and Maurice couldn't do it because Maurice said Kimmy kept trying to take the lead, and Kimmy was like, I'm not trying to take the lead, but you're suffocating me. You're holding me too tight. So Maurice's thing was, okay, fine, I'll let you go. And Kimmy said, see, that's the problem. That's the issue. I didn't say let me go. I said just loosen a little bit. Just give me a minute. Just give me a little room. Louis and Tiffany didn't want to do it at all. And she was basically asking Louis to carry her. And so everybody decided that they were going to deal with it in a different way, right? Now, back down to the Huntsville. I'm going to go ahead and finish knocking Huntsville out, child. Back down to the Huntsville, we see Martell picking his kids up from school. It's the last day of school. He's picking his kids up, and he has his mother with him. And so the two of them end up having this conversation basically about, he tells her about, taking the kids to go see Melody at the event. And they get to talking about their relationship. And Martell's like, my mama, felt some kind of way about some of the things that she feels like Melody said about her. But then there were some things that her mother said that Melody was upset about. Now, if you go back to the first season, Melody she had a really good relationship with Martell's mom. And you could see that relationship clearly has been severed. And probably permanently severed. Because one thing Melody said, she was talking to Stormy later on in the episode about her issues with some of the things that Martell's mom has said about her. And she said, at the end of the day, I really did love her. I really did love her, and we were very close. But at the end of the day, Marcel's her son. Like, I get it. I respect that. Marcel is her son. And I can be cordial, but I understand that they're casualties of war. And the reality is that our relationship is probably just never going to be that. So Melody had a problem with the fact that her mom made some comments about her being lazy and her working Martell to death. And Melody was like, I think we can all see by the way I've been working since me and Martell have no longer been together that I'm not lazy. I don't have no lazy bone in my body. And then on the flip side, his mom was upset over some comments that were made about Martell. Basically, Martell being a hoe. Again, that's his mama. And she's gonna, even though we've seen her chastise him about the fact that, he was out here in them streets and, the things. But she was like, at the end of the day, you made some mistakes, but I still love you. You my son. As she should be. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can tell somebody they wrong and still love them, right? And so I think Melody is absolutely correct when she says, listen, at the end of the day, there are casualties of war. And that is his mother. Ultimately, that's his mom. I don't think she made excuses for Martell and his infidelity. However, that's his mother, and she's gonna love him. She's gonna love him through it. So, back down to the couples retreat, child. They're having dinner, and Lewis and Tiffany were the first ones to show up for dinner. So Dr. Francis starts talking to them, and he says, he's talking to them about the fact that Tiffany has had these losses in her life. She was put up for adoption as an infant. And then her foster parents or her adoptive parents, they had drug issues. And so they were not fully present. And then she went through her divorce. And he said that's 3 major losses in her life. And here go Lewis. I've had losses too. That's just life. Everybody deal with loss. And I'm like, that's not even the point Dr. Francis is trying to make. What he's saying is, your desire to want to have a baby, in spite of the fact that you barely have time for your husband now, is your desire to not be alone. It's your desire. And Tiffany was like, she's right. Like, I don't even like alone time. I always want to be doing something. I always want to be moving. I don't want to be alone. And yes, I want a baby because I love being a mom. And see, their kids are at the point now where they no longer need that day-to-day mom. They're 15 and 16 years old. They don't want their mama around them all the time. They're boys. That's just not what they do. Generally, there are exceptions to every rule, but generally speaking, that's not what kids want, right? And again, Kimmy is like, I feel, she said, Marceau is like, well, do you think that's going to give you enough time for the things that you want, Lewis? And Lewis is like, what you mean? Marceau was like, come on, bro. Like, what we talked about when we was in Atlanta. Oh, you mean sex? Well, with kids, obviously, I probably won't be getting as much sex. And again, we're right back where we started. Like, y'all aren't fixing the problem that y'all have now. You're going to bring a baby into a situation where you already feel like you're not getting enough time. And we all know that a mom, that a child takes away time that really y'all are already fighting for now. They bring up the fact that they just doesn't seem like they're on the same page. Now, I don't think that Dr. Francis is beating up on Tiffany and Lewis, but I do think because they are the main ones that are so resistant to what Dr. Francis is saying. I think that's the way it's being edited. Because there were clearly some other exercises that we didn't see them go through and other conversations that we didn't see all of that footage of. Because they reference different things and we see flashbacks. But I think because Lewis and Tiffany are being so resistant, and the one thing that Kimmy was saying was, I find it very interesting that the same couple that has so much advice for everybody else in their marriage is the same couple that don't want to take any advice from a man who's got 42 years of marriage experience. Because isn't that what Lewis said that makes him qualified him to give advice, is because he's been married and divorced and he knows what that looks like. And Kimmy was like, and she said that to Lewis. She said, well, here's a man who has 42 years of experience of being married, and this is what he does for a living, and you still can't seem to take any criticism. And Lewis, that's not what it is. That's exactly what it is. That was basically the episode. Next week we pick up with the rest of the couples counseling. And I think it gets a little deeper with all of the couples. And that's that. So let me know what y'all think. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace.